Welcome back to the Blocks Retro Repair YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working on this 1955 Studebaker, and the first thing we're going to do is actually work on getting this firewall painted, as I would like to get that painted before the engine goes back in, as it'll be a lot easier to do with the engine out. So, what we're going to do is get this section prepped for paint. Now, we're going to actually include this section along with the firewall, as it looks like that's what it originally was. This car was originally red, and then at some point it was painted green, and whenever they painted it green, they just included that section for some reason. As you can see where the green has chipped off, it is white like the firewall would have been and not red like the body would have been. So we're just going to include that section with the firewall and paint that white. I got this stuff sanded down a little bit. I'm not going for like a perfect finish. I mean, this is the engine bay. I'm not going for like a mirror finish. We're going for, it's going to protect it and it's going to look okay. So I'm not worried too much about it being an absolute perfect. I didn't put a guide coat and block sand it perfectly. I mean, it's a weird shape, so it's kind of difficult to do that anyway. But it got it sanded down enough that it will at least adhere properly. We're going to be using an epoxy-based primer, so it actually is the correct kind of primer to go on bare metal, so the spots that are bare metal, like where I welded in pieces, are just fine. We don't need to do anything like that. Now I need to tape everything off. I got all of that taped off, obviously. I need to tape this section off. I was going to try and remove that, and I can't figure out how. And the only way I can think to figure out how is to take off the outer plate here, but then there's a cork gasket that I have to remove. And I am not going to try and do that because that cork gasket will disintegrate and I will not be able to get a replacement cork gasket for that. So we're just going to paint around that. We'll paint that black later, but for now we're just going to tape that off and do our best to paint around it. It's not like there's rust or anything under it, so there's not too big of a deal. I think we have this all taped off good enough. Everything below the tape is pour 15, so everything above the tape is what we need to actually paint. So I'm going to get some stuff. I already cleaned it off with acetone, but we'll do one more pass of all that fun stuff to get all the dust off this. We'll mix up some paint and spray it. That's looking absolutely fantastic. Once that dries, we'll hit that with some white paint, and then once that dries, we'll hit that with some clear. But for now, that's looking amazing. So I did a little bit of wet sanding, mainly just the flat spots that, you know, are flat and I could sand easily. The rest I don't really care about. So, we're going to get this all cleaned up, tack cloth and all that, and we're going to spray some white. There's our first coat of white. We're going to let this flash off for a few minutes, and then we'll spray our second coat, and then probably a third. And there we go. Now I'm going to mix up my clear coat. Hopefully it's still good. It's fairly old. It was bought for a project many years ago. Let's mix it together and see if we can spray it. It is now clear coated. The issue is, it is a really, really bad clear coat. It's probably going to need sanded and a third coat put on. It started storming really heavily during this process, and my air dryer on the air compressor absolutely could not keep up. It dropped me from the correct around 40 psi going to the gun to probably 10 to 20. It absolutely refused to keep up. I'd have to just do a little bit, stop, do a little bit, stop, do a little bit, stop. It just could not keep up. So unfortunately, we're probably gonna have to sand this clear coat and put a third coat on after this is all done and dry, which means we have to let it cure for around 24 hours or whatever before we can start sanding and put a third coat on. That really sucks, but there's nothing I can really do about it because I was already in the middle of the process when it started thunderstorming. So I guess I should have checked the weather, and I guess I should have had a better air dryer setup. Well, it may not look like much has changed, but a lot of days worth of work has gone into this. I had a nasty run over there from that terrible clear coat job. I sanded that down. I accidentally sanded through the color a little bit, and I had a little bit of primer dry. Like, dang it, okay, I'll respray the color in that section. Resprayed the color, didn't properly tack cloth it and all the fun stuff, didn't let stuff cure, I guess, and it ended up causing a terrible bubble reaction crackling effect over there, so sanded it all the way back down, and then I hit metal accidentally and had to reprimer that section, and now it's been repainted, and it's been reprimered, recolored, and now clear coated. Obviously, it's not a perfect clear coat job. It's one of my first times spraying clear, and I also did it out of a Harbor Freight purple gun, so about as damn good as you'd expect out of for all of those things put together. And like, that's not gonna win any paint awards, but I mean, a cut and buff, I'm sure it would look pretty decent, and I give it about a couple days once the engine's in to be covered in oil and grease, and you'll never see it again, so don't even worry about it. We're going for like a 10-foot car, right? 10 feet away, that looks absolutely phenomenal. Got the transmission up here painted, also got the torque converter painted. I didn't want that to rust because it was quite rusty, so I wire wheeled all that and got it ready to go. So what we're going to do is mount that back onto that, and I guess we'll slip that in. Maybe not yet. I don't want that falling out and getting damaged and all that fun stuff. So let's mount this front piece on this, and then we can also mount some of the peripherals, we'll call them, back on, like the thing that plugs in right there. We got the transmission mounts on, we got that bell housing mounted up, we got all of this stuff together, so that's looking pretty dang beautiful. Finally painting these last two things here on the firewall that really need painted. We have the wiper motor, and we also have the blower motor. The wiper motor, honestly, I think it works. I was able to twist the thing and it spins the thing, so all that's probably good. So we can just tape that off and get that painted. I would take it off and paint it, but as I said when I painted the firewall, I couldn't figure out how to take it off. There's some linkages on the inside that I can't take off. I can't figure out how to take them off to get it out, so we're just gonna paint it where it is. And the blower motor, we have to get that unseized and fixed before I bother painting it, because it is fully seized up. I just hit it with a gloss black enamel. The gloss is what we're gonna use because I'm not planning on clear coating that, so that should just look pretty damn good once that dries. Now we need to work on the blower motor, but first we need to get it unseized, so I gotta pull it out of the passenger floor here and see what we can do to it. As you can see, it's our blower motor and heater core all in one. So let's pull this heater core off. I think it's just these 3 Phillips head screws to take that off, because I don't actually think these coils are bad. I think they're still good, so we're going to try and make sure we save those, because getting replacements would be probably impossible, and I'd have to make them myself. There's that section off. I actually did get this to start moving. It's not super seized, but actually it's getting way less seized. So actually I think I just work this back and forth, maybe work some oil into it, and it'll be good as new. Maybe. Well, actually, it looks like there's a set screw to pull this fan blade off, which, hey, metal fan blade, a mouse can't chew it like it did on the C30. And I think we can take those nuts off and take this whole motor apart, and we can re-oil it and replace these wires, because they need replaced. Okay, that is not ideal. That is a little bit more rust than I like on the inside of my motors usually, but I think we'll be okay. We need to clean all of this rust off, so I slapped in the lathe here. We'll spin it up, and we'll clean it off using this right here. Not perfect, but a million times better, so I will absolutely take it. Went ahead and cleaned this up a little bit more, and that should be perfect. So let's get this installed. Not really, we still have to clean the rest of the housing. You know, I just realized why this looks so damn weird. It only has one coil. It doesn't have the second one over here. That's odd. Okay. Went ahead and got everything sandblasted. Our housings are sandblasted, fan blades, all of these things are sandblasted. Also kind of clean that up a little bit. We'll get all this repainted now. This section here, I made sure not to sandblast the actual coil because that would have ended disastrously. Now we need to replace these wires, and then we can start reassembling this thing. But first, we need to paint all this stuff because I want to paint the inside as well. So let's just slap some paint on everything. Everything's painted up nicely inside and outside. Probably should have painted those bushings, but that paint will be gone in like 2 seconds of it running, so that'll be fine. We just need to reassemble everything. We got the rust cleared off of this. We got this painted up. We got the fancy wires replaced so they're no longer just completely bare. So let's start reassembling this motor and see if we can get it to spin. Went ahead, put it together, and fired it up. It was kind of slow at first, but then it wore through all that stupid paint I put on the bushings, which I shouldn't have done. But once all that wore through, it started spinning good, so I took it back apart, cleaned off all that paint gunk off of the shafts, and re-oiled them up. So now we are good to go. I did unfortunately make this outer shell not so great, so I'm going to repaint that here now that we got it all back together. So let's go ahead and do that, and we should have a functional motor. This thing is putting out a ton of air, so it is fully functional. Let's get this thing installed. Our firewall is looking absolutely fantastic. Those black motors against that white firewall looks so good. So, there's not too much more to do before we gotta slap an engine in this thing. The exhaust manifold is back from the machine shop. They said they could weld it, and they did. They claim this will be just as strong as it was originally, if not stronger. Who knows? I personally trust a machine shop that's probably been in business longer than I've been alive. More than a random TikTok comment saying this will just crack, but who knows? Maybe it will just eventually crack again. So, they also managed to weld our butterfly thing back together. I didn't expect them to actually be able to do that. It was very demolished and missing a few chunks, but we'll have to drill out these and put in some actual brass bushings because there's no way those oval-shaped holes are going to work properly for our shaft that goes through that. But that's not a big deal. They were able to remove both broken studs out of this, which is good. This one here I was not able to do. I didn't send this one to the machine shop. I guess I should have, but I couldn't, so I ended up having to drill it out and putting in a helicoil. So that's good there. This stud actually didn't break and is actually still in good shape. Somehow. We've got these cleaned up a little bit, and now we're going to get these things ready for paint. I'm going to be painting these with a 2000 degree black paint. I think that'll go well with the engine, and it should hold up fairly well being 2000 degree paint. I put a first coat on this side, we'll flip them over, put a coat on that side, and probably do that until we get a couple coats of this paint on. It'll give them a nice matte black that should hold up to the heat. This will also help hide that weld, as it'll make it the same color as everything else. Now we're going to go ahead and put them on the actual engine block. So let's get them mounted up. I got brand new gaskets for this, so everything should be permanently ready to be sealed up. There we go. The exhaust manifolds are on both sides, and that's looking pretty damn good. So, now it's actually time to put this back in the car. What I've been doing is going around replacing all of the tie rod end boots because they were completely disintegrated. I got that one replaced, I got that one replaced, I gotta get one for that one still, and one for that one there. We'll do the outer ones sometime. I don't need to do those ones before I put the motor in, but those ones in the center there are gonna be a hell of a lot more difficult to do once the motor's in, so I figured I better do those a while because they were basically disintegrated. So, gotta finish those last ones there, and then we can put this back together, and I think we'll be ready for the motor. It is finally time to put these two back together. I gone ahead and got the engine and transmission mounted back together, got the torque converter and all that back in there, so time to lift this thing up and slot it back in. It should be extremely simple. It's held in by 4 nuts, so this should be very easy. We just basically lift it up, slide it in, set it down. Assuming our new DIY transmission and engine mounts actually fit. If they don't, we could have problems, but let's find out. But my transmission is strapped too far back on the transmission, so it's hitting the firewall. What I'm going to have to do is drop the transmission. It should set on the cross member, just not lined up properly, obviously. Move this strap back a little bit, and then I should be able to slide it in the rest of the way. Got it in as far as I can using the strap on the transmission, so what we're going to have to do now is use the transmission jack on the transmission to lift it up so I can get it up over the cross member and slot it in. So let's do that. I might actually have to drop the cross member, but we're going to try this first. Motor is in. It is sitting on its motor mounts. However, as you can tell, one of our transmission mounts unfortunately did not survive. I didn't catch it, but I had it caught at an angle, and when I sat all the weight down on it, it went rip and ripped right off. Which is not to be not expected. When you set a 500-pound engine and like 150-pound transmission on this at the wrong angle, it's not surprising it ripped off. Now, ultimately, I don't know how strong these would have been originally, but I do know that this was stronger than the ones that were on the car. It would have 100% ripped off it. I used one of the original ones before I ripped out all the old rubber out. The old rubber was super weak, and it took much less force for me to do this. It did not take me a 500-pound engine. It took my hands. So, yeah. That sucks. I actually would like to remove these rear fenders. We're going to start with this side as I think it's in better shape and hopefully will come off a little bit easier. Technically, they're supposed to be removable. That was, 50, 70 years ago, so now it's full of dirt, dust, debris, all that fun stuff, and most importantly, rust. So, let's see if we can figure out how to get this off, because I would like to fix some rust in there. We also need to figure out how to remove this piece of, probably aluminum trim anyway, because one, it has a dent in the end, and 2, I'm not going to want to paint it with that on there. So, without further ado, let's see if we can get this off. This is what I mean about the dent. It's dented in there, it's dented in there, and there's rust along this edge, and if there's rust along this edge, there's rust under this piece of metal. So, I need to get in there. So I pulled this tail light off and put the screws back in so I didn't lose them, but it looks like this thing might actually clip on, so I'm going to try clipping it off with some plastic tools very lightly. I don't want to bend anything or damage anything further, so we're going to be careful, but let's see if this just pops off. I'm not actually sure how it comes off, so I figure we might as well give this a try. Right, it does just clip off. It just clips around these clips, so that was easy enough to remove, but as you can tell, there's some rust and a lot of debris under here, so it's a very good thing that we're doing this. And now I know how to take this rear quarter off. We just have to undo all these 700 bolts. Cool. Amazingly, I think I only had one bolt break. The one directly under there broke. I pulled these metal plugs out of right here. Got those out and took the bolts out that were behind those. Got the bolt back there, the bolt there, and the 3 bolts back there off. And of course, all the ones up top here, I think we're ready to just pull this off. I used some plastic tools just to move this, and it's moving, so I think I just need to take good hold of it and yank it off. Aha! Got me. There's 2 bolts here on the inside that I couldn't find. That's why this won't come off. And this is why I decided to spend the time and remove this thing. You can see a whole bunch of rust. I wonder where I can get a replacement one of these things that just has this little bead that goes over to cover the seam. It's just on a thin piece of metal. That'll be fun to recreate, but yeah, that's, to be fair, we can see that rust from the outside, but all of this surface rust that ultimately isn't a big deal right now, but could become a very big deal in the future if not taken care of, definitely could be very problematic. So, very happy I decided to take that off. Much worse, the body of the car itself, which looks hilarious without this piece, but as you can see, there's actually a rust hole right there I didn't even know about, so that's going to have to be repaired. All that metal's pretty thin. We're probably going to have to put a pretty large section in right there. Why the hell is that green? To my knowledge, this car has never been green, but that's odd. But if you come a little bit further back, you can just see all of the rust on this thing. It is... Okay, that's some interesting undercoating, I guess. But yeah, there's where we repaired some rust in the trunk, so we'll be able to fix that from the outside here and make that look really nice. And on this top edge here, there's actually a rust hole right there. Ultimately, not as bad as it could have been. That green is really weirding me out because now we've got so many different colors on this car. I've been assuming that this white has been the primer of the car, which I think makes sense. The car is currently green. Under the dash says it was Rancho Red. Right here we have an orange, and now we have green right there. Starting to get concerned that this car was a parts car. But I don't know how this panel would also be this... I have no idea. Somebody's painted this a few times. Somebody's probably took this to a Mako special and just got it resprayed a million times. I'm not sure what's going on with this. I'm actually adding a safety measure to this engine. This uses old pancake style mounts, so if one happens to break, you have a problem because they're not caged like modern motor mounts. This is just simply two pieces of metal with rubber in the middle. And if that rubber fails, which when I got this car, this one was actually already broken, so it's very possible and very much did happen, then your motor is just free falling. And if that side breaks, it could tilt with the torque, and if this one breaks, you bump up, and all of those could pull on the throttle. So I'm making these. We're going to put a extended bolt in here, put a nice grade 8 bolt that's just a little bit longer there, so we can bolt this on with a nice washer and bolt the other end into one of these extra holes here on this motor mount tray on the frame, just so that if this motor mount breaks, the motor can't really go anywhere to pull on the throttle much. At most, it'll move like half an inch. Can't really go to the side too much, and I doubt both will break at the same time, but we'll have one on each side like this. That'll hopefully prevent the motor from being able to go pretty much anywhere, but since it's a flexible piece of stainless steel cable that should have a braking rating of like 1,700 pounds, so it should be plenty strong, and since it's flexible, the vibrations from the motor really shouldn't affect the frame any more than they already do. Since we have the rubber here, I didn't want to add a solid piece of metal because then that you're going to end up with a lot of bad vibrations. So this should help absorb that and just add a little bit of extra safety. It can't hurt. Basically, I'm just making these out of, I think it's 1/8 inch, yes, 1/8 inch stainless steel cord, some fancy little crimpy things, and one of those little fancy thingy-majigs there so we can just run a bolt through it. Put a nice washer on each side, and it should be plenty strong. And of course, we're using a proper hydraulic crimper to properly get a good crimp on these, so we shouldn't have any issues of any of them pulling out. That should be plenty strong. And for how cheap these materials are, it's honestly very much worth it. I mean, even I didn't have the crimper, though. I have many uses for a nice hydraulic crimper, so that wasn't a big deal. But it was also $38. The stuff for this is not expensive, so I feel like it's just a good idea. But I think that's where we're going to leave it. The engine's setting in. It's not actually bolted down yet. I got to get the different bolts for those motor mounts so I can actually put on my safety chains to keep this thing from ever causing any major damage if one of those breaks. You'll notice if they break for sure, but it won't, cause you to wreck possibly. That's the goal, at least. We got this thing off. I still need to figure out if I can possibly find a new one of these. It's just a little seam cover that slips in here and gets pinched that covers this seam. Ultimately, I guess I could live without it if I can't find one, but that's going to be hard for me to recreate because it is a funky bench piece of metal that I definitely doubt that I could recreate at any functional level. Did cut out the rust right there so we can get a new plate welded in there, but we're going to take some paint and paint the inside because I noticed the inside of this was never painted from the factory. If I knew where this little piece of rust I cut out, I would show you it, but yeah, there's no paint on the inside of this, so it probably just rusted from the inside out. There's probably a mouse nest in there at some point and it rotted that out. So we'll repair that. We have some rust to repair in this section as well. We have that section we need to clean up. We have that section down there. I also cut a little bit of the rust out. Unfortunately, it's rusted both the outer and the inner, so we're going to have to cut out the inner and weld that in, and then weld the outer and all that fun stuff. We got some pretty bad rust up here. I cut some of it out. I got to be really careful because right here's the window, so we're going to have to protect that when I try to weld this. Might have to get a plasma cutter so I can cut this out properly to get the rest of that rust out of right there. A little bit of rust down through here. I'm not too concerned about this texture on this because this is actually the underside. The other fender actually slips on top of this. So I'm not too worried about that texture, but we just have some rust through here I got to weld up. Not too big of a deal, but again, just more rust. I'm going to hopefully finish this side before I even start that other side because I have imagined it's going to be a lot worse. So we're just going to go ahead and get all this welded up because honestly, this shouldn't be more than a weekend's worth of work to get finished. And then on this fender, the only actual rod on this fender is this little bit of cheese right here. We'll just have to cut this section out and weld in a new section Not a big deal. That shouldn't be too difficult at all. The other side, unfortunately, is quite a good bit worse, especially because there's body fill in that, so who knows how bad it actually is underneath all of the body fill that's in this. That'll be real fun. And then it also, unfortunately, has a little bit of bubbling there, but that's not a big deal. But if we come back here to the fuel door, we have a ton of rust right along there, and whatever holds this hinge on, it's not holding it on correctly, so I'll have to fix that when we have this fender off as well. And again, I hate to see how bad the rust is underneath this. We're also going to plug our aftermarket antenna hole. Since we're not going to be putting an aftermarket antenna right there, we fixed a original antenna to put up there. But if you like what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe. Hopefully next time we get this thing driving again.